Hey, it's Alex from Boardgameco, and today we have actually a fairly short week of stuff to go over because between projects that aren't really funding or doing well and or projects that have actually gotten pushed off, and combined with two of the projects that I'm doing full videos on, so the end net result is that we have a fairly condensed, fairly short week, all things considered, and we'll just go through it and we'll see what happens. As usual, timestamps down below, and let's jump into it. Okay. So to begin with, we have Defection, which is unfortunately cancelled. This is one that I was keeping an eye on because it seemed to be hovering a bit, just enough support that it looked like it might be able to pick up steam, but in the end, they decided to cancel it. They didn't want to scrape by. They will relaunch. They have no official date. They are looking at early 2021 as of now, but no official date. That's just kind of a, hey, we'll see, we'll hope. This is one that looked interesting. I didn't do a deep dive into it yet because I usually like to wait and see how the campaign is doing, but that being said, it is canceled for now and coming back. And from there, I'm going to be doing something new, which is usually when a campaign is not funding, I don't bother covering it because, to be frank, there's a lot of work that goes into researching each of these campaigns to see whether I can give you what kind of a opinion I can give you. It's not, I don't just look at a Kickstarter and say, oh, this looks like that. I actually do research into each of these campaigns, and it's a lot of work to put research into a campaign that won't fund anyways. That being said, I realize that I can include some of the campaigns that aren't funded yet without doing that research, just as a quick overview for anyone who just wants to be informed. If you're not subscribed to other channels that give you this information, I can give you this information as a quick overview without actually doing into talking about the value unless and until it is actually funding. And starting off the bat, we have Tales of Conflict. Tales of Conflict has 14 days to go, 4,000 out of 12,000 raised, and this one looks pretty cute. Honestly, my daughter watched me watching the video. I mean, I was watching the Kickstarter video to just do a quick overview. My daughter watched it, and she's like, no, you have to get it. You have to get it. And I was like, well, we can't yet. It's not funded yet. But it looks pretty adorable. I don't think it's going to be breaking anyone's strategy, whatever. It's a light, simple game. You pick a few tribes, you start with some basic gear, you can level up, and you basically roll dice and attack each other. I think it's a great introduction game. It's a great gateway game. I don't think it's likely to win any strategy awards or whatnot, but it does look cute. It does look fun. It's a very well done video. Adorable animals. All in all, one that is definitely, I'm honestly, given the things I see funding sometimes, I'm surprised this one isn't doing better. Feel free to check it out. Maybe you can push it over that line, maybe not. Next up from there, we have Familiar Alchemy. This one I know less about. I did watch the video. I did a quick overview. There's an aspect of growing trees and then chopping off the trees, chopping off parts of the trees while keeping the core part intact. It's an interesting game. I don't really know a lot about it, but in case you want to take a look into it, this is basically Doomsday. What was it called again? It was Familiar Alchemy. It's a 5,000 out of 10,000 raised, 6 days to go. It unfortunately does not seem likely it'll make it, but the artwork looks pretty good. It looks like a light introduction game to whatnot, so feel free to check it out. And from there we have Feudal Endeavor, and this is a tough one because this is their third Kickstarter. They had to cancel it twice before, and it's not looking like it's going to be any different this time round, unfortunately. $2,000 out of 9,700. It's I believe it's in Canadian dollars, which is why you're seeing those numbers. Yep, it's Canadian dollars. This one, at a glance, it looks interesting. It's a game of hidden bidding, tableau building, and simultaneous actions. Overall, it looked pretty interesting. They kind of just said for this third campaign, we're just dumping all the stretch goals. We're showing you everything up front. Take it or leave it, and it doesn't seem to be garnering the level of support they currently need. As of now, it is a Kickstarter exclusive product. They basically said, hey, we're not saying it'll never go to retail, but we'd have no retail plans, and if it does go to retail, it'll be in a much more stripped down version without any of the extras. So for right now, if you want it, the only guarantee is a Kickstarter exclusive. If you're interested, take a look. I wish them much luck. I don't know. Yeah, it's unfortunate. This is their third time trying to run this one, which makes it a little tricky. Next up from there, we have Arcana Magica. Arcana Magica is one that I actually saw advertised a lot, and I am a little surprised it's not funding. I guess, yeah, I mean, it's not pulling that support that it needs. It's at 5,000 raised out of, $16,000 goal, 105 backers, 18 days to go. This one may very well make it. There's enough time, and it only just launched recently this past week, so there certainly is enough time for this to still make it. At the same time, it is struggling, and your support will matter in case you do want to see this fund. Yeah, it looks like an interesting one with tarot cards and whatnot, with dice and tarot cards. I don't know much about the gameplay. I believe Sarah Shaw had a great, where is she? She's over here. Sarah Shaw had a great 1-minute video. You can watch this. In general, I'm a huge fan of her videos. I find it so hard to actually pay attention to rules videos, but anyone, myself included, can watch for 1 minute, and that's all it really takes. Watch this video, you'll get a feel for whether the gameplay seems like it's interesting to you and whether you want to watch something else or not. So that's basically it on Arcana Magica. take a look, check it out, see if it's something for you. And then lastly, we have one more that's not funding. This is one that I normally actually would cover a bit more because it's so close. $89,000 raised out of $96,000 with 4 days to go. This will almost certainly hit the funding goal, but likely by a very small margin. It'll probably just make it past. And this one is actually, to be frank, I'm kind of surprised to see it this high, because this is basically $89,000 raised with no information, unless I'm missing something. I mean, Henry Lewis seems to have some, I don't know, whatever props or whatever you want to call it in different elements. He's worked in theater, television, artistic director, comedy. He's done stuff. He's not like a nobody, but at the same time, the actual campaign releases basically zero information about the game. This is a set of 3 different escape puzzles, basically, the escape rooms in a box kind of situation. I don't know if they actually called it escape rooms, but it's puzzles, elements of that kind of thing, interwoven mysteries or whatnot, and puzzles and everything like that. But they released very little actual information. I mean, it's basically, this is the graphic they show, and they continuously show elements of this graphic and this stuff, but without actually giving you much more in the way of information. So when they're asking $48 for that box without giving you any information, I mean, kudos to the people backing it. I'll tell you, this does look cool, but at the same time, it's a lot of money to be giving up, $90,000 with not much in the way of anything to really go off of other than this little blurb about what each one is covering. That being said, if you want to be one of the people who pushes over the line, it's not going to take that much more to get them over the line. With 4 days to go, every single backer will matter. Which brings us to Rurik. Rurik Stone and Blade is one that I already covered. The reason I'm really bringing it up today is, first of all, they're doing phenomenally well. They're going to exceed their original Kickstarter, which is great for an expansion. Good for them. I am a huge fan of Rurik, which is why I'm bringing this video up again. I think Rurik's one of those sleeper hits that not enough people know about, and everyone who does know about it seems to love it. I highly recommend it. And the reason I'm bringing this up is not just because I love it, but rather they announced, I believe, was it an update? I don't know if it was an update or not. I don't know where they announced it, but basically they said it's currently available on Tabletop Simulator and Tabletopia and what other platform as well. I don't recall what it was, but the idea being that if you want to try this out, if you want to give this a shot, if you want to see why everyone is giving such glowing testimonials about this game, you have an opportunity to do so without spending $100-$150 to get the game, the expansion, the whatever, although the $150 is like for everything, so it does vary in price. But basically, you have an opportunity to go ahead and try it out, get together some friends, give the game a shot. I can tell you that it's one that games vary in how the implementation would, play out in Tabletop Simulator or whatnot, just because of how much you have to handle stuff. But the amount of handling in this game, I can't see it being a problem at all. To be clear, I have not played it online, but as soon as I saw the announcement, I told my friends, I was like, hey, we got to play this online, because basically we played a lot in person. We love this game, but we do have a friend that moved away, and we play some online games with him. But now we will be adding Rurik to that roundup because, well, it's a great game. I highly recommend it. Worth trying out. Additionally, they have unlocked a bunch of stretch goals, more buildings, more cards, and I don't remember every single thing. You can just check it out over here. Intrigue cards, epic structure, thicker box, epic structure, intrigue cards, new leader. Here we go. There was a new leader. I thought there was. But that's basically it. Rurik has a bunch of stretch goals. Game I love. Highly recommend checking it out. And of course, like I said, Tabletop Simulator, Tabletopia, and one other platform are available if you want to give this one a shot and see for yourself. And if you don't already know, I did both a review and a should you back it on this game, so plenty of other information to check out. From there, we have the first real new game that is successfully funded that we can start talking about, and this is Philosophia, The Floating World. This is their second game. They had previously Philosophia something else. I don't remember the name of it. Let's see if we can find it over here. It's somewhere down here where it was. Let me see. They had somewhere here. I probably should have just given up. Philosophia, Dare to be Wise. Okay, they had Dare to be Wise was their first game, and this is a very interesting one. And for me, I'm not personally pulled in because the art doesn't do it for me. I find the art and the world building here to be something that's not pulling me in. I will say that I am upset about that because I actually am very intrigued by the elements of this game. It's a deck building game, which I love deck building, but it's a deck building game with simultaneous play, which is fascinating. What that means is the players are doing things at the same time, and if there's ever a conflict, you just resolve it based off of this initiative track on the side, whoever's higher. So if you and I want to do the same thing, there's no actual turn structure, but rather you just resolve it based off of the initiative track. I will note they do have a variant that does involve non-simultaneous play in case you don't want to do that, but I like the idea. I just find it interesting to have an element of reacting to each other in real time. I can see it being a problem for some groups if you have annoying people who either try to aggressively speed things up or people who try to wait and see how everything plays out. But for practically speaking, assuming you don't have a group that's trying to take advantage of the system, I can see it playing out in a very interesting way. So it definitely is pulling me in and it's intriguing in that sense. I will say the testimonials, before we get into like, should you back it, should you not? Testimonials are a little bit all over the place. If you've watched my stuff, you know that I give testimonials a very hard time. If you're going to say something that can only be construed as positive. Do not say things that can be construed as completely medium. They had about 50-50, but honestly, when a game has enough positive ones, I don't feel the need to look into the medium ones, because if someone else, if they have 3 testimonials that say this game's incredible, I really want to get it, and they have 3 testimonials that say, the game looks pretty, I don't care. I'll take the ones that are positive. And they had enough positive ones. Like I said, they had both over here. They had ones that were saying nothing, and they had ones that were saying, this game's incredible. I've played this game 5 times in 3 days, and that's saying something for me. They have this one. It's one of those games you don't stop thinking about even when you're not playing it. So it definitely is one that I'm super intrigued by. I just wish the theme or the art were pulling me in more. I actually like Japanese themes or whatnot, feudal Japan, whatever it is. At the same time, the art is really just not pulling me in on this one. The cards, and that's actually a selling point of the game, that they have everything so highly illustrated, but the actual iconography is at the bottom of the cards. They have a few actions. So either way, for me personally, it's not pulling me in, but the actual gameplay mechanics, I am very, very intrigued by. Here's that initiative track we talked about. I think it's actually called the influence track over here. Past that, in terms of the value proposition, this game is going to be £69 or $89 for this game, and this is one where I am, well, to begin with, I'm semi-skeptical that it will hold this value if you're trying to sell it. Meaning, if you're trying to sell this in the secondary market, I don't think you're going to get your money back at all. If you look at their initial Kickstarter, the first game, it's one that, there are a bunch of people trying to sell it for even less than they paid for it, but there's just not a lot of sales. There's actually only one sale, and that's at $40, which is basically half the price once you account for the game plus shipping. So it's one that I don't think you are likely to get your money back. At the same time, if you're comparing it to buying it at retail, then it will probably be cheaper than buying it at retail. If you look at their other game, it's available at Cool Stuff Inc. This is one where getting it now is probably your best bet if you want to try it, but understand that it is a risk because you are unlikely to get your money back when you sell in the secondary market. At the same time, it's worth noting that if you are someone who does buy things from the secondary market, if you're not averse to waiting a little longer, then this game is likely going to be cheaper on the secondary market when you eventually want to get it there. So it's one of those. It's, if you're not averse to buying things used, then it's probably just best to wait and see. But if you're comparing it to retail, it's not a bad buy, especially if you are doing the 2-for-1 option. If you're buying both of the games together, it is a significantly better buy than getting these at retail. I'm not comparing it to used. Like I said, if you don't mind buying it used, getting these on the secondary market yourself is probably the best bet. But comparing it to retail, it's certainly not a bad buy on Philosophia Floating World. And I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of that. From there, we have the Pet Cemetery. The Pet Cemetery is 100% funded, just crossed that line, 240 backers, 17 days to go. This is a cute one. It's a cute, light little game. I think it's a great entry point game, just looking at it. The reviews overall were decently positive, meaning it seems a bunch of people looked at it and probably got the same impression I did, which is, okay, this looks, interesting, but nothing really here. But then they followed up with, there actually was more strategy than we thought, or there actually was a degree of planning and strategizing that goes into this game, which is, good. That's good to have that in a game. At the same time, it's probably going to still be on the lighter end, and that's where the price is going to hurt it. With $30 US to get this game, plus of course shipping, it's unlikely to be, by the way, can I just say, this is clearly the female version of that guy from, Despicable Me. Clearly. I love it. Absolutely love this, the two of them should meet and fall in love. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, watch Despicable Me. In any case, going back to the cost here, yeah, it's one that sadly the cost is unlikely. It's one that you're unlikely to see your money back in terms of getting it later, and it's not heavily funded enough with 240 backers. It's not one that you're bound to see a lot on the secondary market. So it's kind of going to be similar to Philosophia. If you want it for yourself, by all means back it, but you're unlikely to get your money back by selling it. At the same time, it's a bit of a risk to get it on the secondary market because there's just not a ton of support. At least Philosophia had, 588 backers with time to go, so that's twice the market. So it's a bit of risk. It's a bit of a risk either way, but it's not a safe back in terms of getting your money back. From there we have Riftforce, which is an interesting one. Riftforce is one that seems, so first of all, I'll say I watched this video and I was like, it actually looks really intriguing, which usually when I see low funded games I expect to not be that interested, but watching the video I was like, this looks like a game that I actually think would be really intriguing. And then I watched Rado's run through, and sure enough, Shay Parker was incredibly effusively optimistic or happy about this game. And it's always tough watching these reviews or previews where you are getting a bit of a mixed bag of content in terms of the overall opinion of the person giving the review, but he seemed pretty darn positive about this game, and I think this is a game I would like. You basically are drafting a bunch of different elements and then playing those cards with numbers to try to manipulate the board state to get what you want, and it seems to fall into that line of potentially, not for sure, potentially being something that sticks around, something like a Lost Cities, like a, I don't know, Battle Line, kind of these lighter games that might actually have an audience after the fact. The art is by Miguel Coimbra, so there's a name involved there. Overall, this looks like one that is super interesting and one that you might actually really like. At the same time, the price point is fairly high for what you're getting. The price point is $30 plus shipping, and shipping is not a lot to be fair, but still $30 plus shipping to get this game when you're comparing it to a lighter game like Battle Line, like Lost Cities, in that range, and this is the sheer contents you get. You get a bunch of decks of cards in this game. It's probably not going to, it's one that's unlikely to hold its value after the fact. So as much as I am interested in it myself, it is one that I am waiting to get down the road. It will probably show up in retail, it'll probably be available cheaper, and it's one that I'm holding off on despite being personally interested. At the same time, obviously, like any of these things, if you want to support the creator, if you really want to get it sooner, if you don't want to take any risks, then go ahead and buy it. What are you out? $35? It's not the end of the world. But for me, I have too many games already, so I tend to be very conservative with how I spend my money, allowing myself very few exceptions when I think something will be cheaper down the road. From there we have Monsters on Board, and Monsters on Board is one that's getting its own full dedicated video, so I'm not going to do a full, thing here, but I will say in case you want to skip that video, the short version of Monsters on Board is it is one that will likely be a safe back, but if you get it, make sure to get it not at the retail level, but rather at the Deluxe or the Deluxe Plus expansion level, and try to get it to the table within the first 3 months so you can see if it's for you, and then sell it or trade it as necessary while the market is still hot for this game. If you want more context and more detail on what I just said, well, later this week I will have a Monsters on Board 15-minute video. I already filmed it, so I know, coming up later this week. From there we have Tomorrow Dies Today, a strategy game for supervillains with 158 backers, $17,000 raised out of a $50,000 goal, and 18 days to go. This is one where the price point really kills it, unfortunately. The price on this one is $65 for this game, which is just a lot of money for a first-time creator, for a game that looks simultaneously interesting, but also doesn't look to be at the level of graphic design or polish or finesse you would want out of a game that's $65. So the price point here is really what kills it, unfortunately. And the gameplay elements, actually, there were some super interesting gameplay ideas in there that I actually think might play out really well. There's this concept of having like a supervillain that can potentially turn all the players against each other to get like the supervillain against a henchman. It actually looked like to be some interesting game elements, game mechanics going on here. Overall, I just think at the end of the day, the price point plus the lack of polish means that people who back this are going to get it. Great, good for them, but it's very unlikely to be one that holds its value after the fact, unless it's some magical sleeper hit, which generally is more of an exception and not the norm. I do want to say, and I hate doing this, but I'm going to do this, but basically, they have over here a 9.5 on BoardGameGeek. Okay, they're advertising in pretty big 9.5 on BoardGameGeek. Now, I'm not here to dump on small publishers, small creators, small whatever, but when you have a 9.5 on BoardGameGeek that you're advertising heavily on your page, and when the actual number of ratings you have on your game is 39 ratings, and about 15, 20 of them are a bunch of people who rated the game at 10 and never rated any other game on BoardGameGeek, that is almost like it's clearly a bunch of shill ratings from people who you said, hey, sign up for BoardGameGeek and rate this game at 10. It doesn't mean that they're false. It doesn't mean, maybe they're people who played the game and they never played any other game, but it doesn't look good. It does not look good that you are heavily advertising a 9.5 on BoardGameGeek that is being pushed up artificially by people who you said go on there and rate a game despite the fact that you've never rated any other game. Half of them were new users, possibly most of them were new users, and the rest of them didn't really have any prior other games. If the only game you're ever rating is this one, fine, do it, I get it. Don't advertise this heavily on your campaign page as if it means something when it clearly doesn't. I don't like yeah, I don't. Either way, I'm moving on from that. From there, we have the Reckoner's Steelslayer. The Reckoner's Steelslayer is another one that will be getting its own full dedicated. Not only will it be getting a dedicated should you back it, I also just did a review on this game and will be putting my review up. The review is of the base game, not of Steelslayer. I'll be putting up the review along with it. Spoilers in case you want to save yourself the time. The Reckoners is amazingly fun. I'm having a ton of fun with the game, and I will say that the Kickstarter overall, there's a bit more of a hedging in terms of when you actually watch the video, if you choose to watch the video, but overall I think it's a decent price point, and I think it's a decent choice to back the Kickstarter as opposed to waiting for any other options. I'll get more into it in the actual video, but overall, if you don't want to watch the video, I guess my overall recommendation would be back the Kickstarter, and also make sure to get that Stockpile Epic Edition, which is a fantastic price for that. And lastly, from there, we're going to close up with a few things that basically were games that were supposed to be showing up this week and didn't. These were all the games that there were literally 4 games I was all prepped for, I was going to be covering this week, and we are not, because they got pushed off for a variety of reasons. And first of all, we have Dungeon Fighter. Dungeon Fighter is being backed on Kickstarter. Now it's September 29th. It was originally going to be September something 8th, I think it was. But either way, they pushed it off. They're doing a re-release of the game, cleaning up some things, keeping the same core, putting it on Kickstarter later, so you can expect a video on that in like 2-3 weeks. But either way, the reason I mentioned this now, well, one of the reasons is just to tell you I had other stuff coming, but also make sure to note over here, stay updated and get a special gift. Make sure to go ahead, if you want a set of foil cards or whatnot, or a set of sleeves, set of custom sleeves, go ahead and put your email in there. From there, we have Hogs of War, the miniatures game. Hogs of War, the miniatures game, they already had a Hogs of War, the card game. They're having a miniatures game coming. If you want to take a look over here, the Hungry Gamer, it looks like, is actually going to have his own something up. Go ahead and subscribe to the Hungry Gamer if you haven't already. He has a lot of content, good stuff, so you should definitely subscribe to him as well. But overall, this picture looks cool, right? I have no idea if the game's going to be good. I have no idea if it's bad. Honestly, I tend to be a little averse to skirmish games, so it probably isn't the game for me. That being said, this picture makes me look like I should change my opinion of what a game is or isn't for me, because it does look so cool. It's adorable. It's just adorable. Either way, from there we have Frostpunk. Frostpunk was pushed off because of the whole thing with Poland's Kickstarter was going to be launched, and they're going to be the initial game on there. Either way, something to do with Poland's Kickstarter, but it's being pushed off. But either way, they basically, Frostpunk is having a board game come. Looks cool. This is a lot of the same people from Awakened Realms, so it's definitely, even though it's a fairly Glass Cannon, it doesn't have a lot of stuff under their belt, the people involved in Glass Cannon do, so this is one you should definitely keep an eye out. Quackalope already has a TTS gameplay for it, and I believe they will be having physical as well, but they don't have that up yet. And then lastly, we have Freedom 5, which is a behemoth of a bunch of industry and designer names being shoved together, which they have it's Freedom 5. It's going to be Richard Lanius, Adam Sadler, Brady Sadler, what's it called? We have, here we go, Arcane Wonders, Greater Than Games, and Dice Towers Essentials. That's a lot of powerful names being shoved together in a game that is effectively a remake of Defenders of the Realm, combined with the Sentinels of the Multiverse World, with a bunch of changes and adjustments. I like cooperative games. I never really got into Defenders of the Realm or the next one, Defenders of the Last Stand, but this time round I will probably be trying to get in on it because it looks cool, and it's superheroes, and it's cooperative, and it's a bunch of names and people and companies I like, and that's basically it. That is everything. A lot of pre and post stuff that isn't really usual for my roundup videos, but that's because we didn't have a lot of content this week. It was, it's good. It gives our wallets a break while we rest and rest and recover and all that. Next week we do have a few things coming, and it's the week after that where the big names are really going to start to drop. Give your wallet a break. Take a little time to save up some money, or to save up those dollar pledges, because you will need them, because the big names are coming, and they're coming soon. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Boardgameco, and I hope you have a good one.